BIONICLE Adventures 2 Trial by Fire. Written by Greg Farshidy. Narrated by Trajan M. Chapter 4. The first thing Anawa felt was the heat. It was never this hot in Po Metro, not even in a sculpture field in the middle of the day. What in the name of Matanui was going on? That's when he opened his eyes and saw the flames leaping in the furnace. Suddenly he remembered the blast, the fall, everything. He shook Vakama, saying, "Wake up! Might be your last chance!" The toe of fire's eyes snapped open and he looked around. They'd moved a long way through the chute and were almost in the mouth of the furnace. There was no time to jump out of the chute, and once inside the melting chamber, not even the power of Atoa would save them. "Don't you have a disc for this?" asked Anawa. "Quiet! I have to concentrate," Vakama answered. He reached out his hands toward the mouth of the furnace and struggled to call upon his Toa energies. He knew that he had the ability to create fire. Now he was gambling that he could control it as well. The chute brought them closer and closer to the end. Anawa wondered if his mask of power might be able to rescue them, then sadly remembered that he did not even know what power his mask possessed. It was up to Vakama. The Toa of Fire summoned every last bit of his willpower and hurled it at the furnace. Then, to his amazement, the fires began to flicker. He felt heat pouring into his body as the flames died down to mere sparks. Soon, even the sparks were gone. "I don't believe it," Anawa whispered. "How did you— Watch out!" Vakama yelled, just before unleashing twin white-hot bursts of flame that burned a hole through the ceiling of the building. The streams of fire lasted for a long, long moment before Vakama cut them off. Then he finally collapsed, exhausted. "What did you do?" "Absorb the fire," said Vakama, out of breath. "But I couldn't contain the power. Had to release it, or—" Anawa glanced up in time to see Nidiki back away from the railing and vanish into the darkness. He considered giving chase, but he knew his four-legged enemy would already be long gone. Besides, there was a worse problem to be faced. "That fire blast, Vakama, it's going to bring the Vaki on the run," he said, helping the Toa of Fire to his feet. "The Nurok will haul us in for destruction of Metru property, and our mission will be over." "Nuri and Akmu?" Anawa shook his head. "My guess is we're going to have to find them. Again. Let's go." As it turned out, tracking down the two Matoran was not very difficult. Akmu had been to Tametru before, but didn't know it well, and wasn't willing to risk running into Nidiki. Nuri did know all the alleyways and shortcuts, but was too frightened to go very far. Anawa found them hiding among some chutes that were closed for repair. Vakama knelt down and looked at both of them. "Listen to me. It should be obvious now that someone doesn't want us to find the Great Discs. That means neither one of you is safe until they are found. Understand?" Nuri nodded. Akmu shrugged. Vakama decided that would have to be enough. "Then let's go to the fire pits." The Tametru fire pits consisted of a half-dozen deep, narrow craters from which spewed forth great jets of flame. A nest of underground pipelines fed the fires to wherever they were needed in the Metru. Given their importance, it was no surprise that the site was fenced in and guarded by Nurok. "Can't we just go up and tell them why we need the disc?" asked Nuri. "If they listened, and if they believed us, and if they were willing to take us to Taragaduma to explain, maybe we would get the disc," said Anawa. "Or maybe not. So we bend the rules. Hey, you can't make a sculpture without shattering some protodermis, right?" "We need a distraction," said Vakama. Anawa smiled. "Done." A few moments later, they were in position. Vakama and Nuri had crept as close to the fence as they could without being seen. Anawa and Akmu had moved near a pile of stone left over from a recent excavation. At Vakama's signal, Anawa focused his elemental power. First, one block of stone went flying to crash against the fence, then 2, then 6, until the Vaki rushed over to see what was happening. Anawa got a little carried away and sent a block crashing into one of the Nurok. As soon as the Vaki had left their posts, Vakama and Nuri rushed forward. Vakama used his power to heat up the fence and melt a hole for the two of them. "Are you sure you know which fire pit contains the disc?" the Toa Metru whispered. "I saw a carving," answered Nuri. "I think it was correct." The Matoran led Vakama to the lip of one of the pits. The Toa of Fire peered over, then jumped back as flames roared from it. Once the fire subsided, he said, "Come on, we don't have long." Melting handholds in the sides of the pit, Vakama climbed down with Nuri clinging to him. Down below, he could see a disc wedged into the wall, somehow intact despite the intense heat. Vakama reached down and pried it loose. Yes, it did have the symbol of Tom Etcher on it, and its 3-digit disc code indicated it had a power level of 9, the highest known concentration of energy possible in a Kanoka disc. This was a great disc. "We have it," said Vakama. "Climb over me and get out of the pit." Nuri climbed over Vakama's shoulders, but before he could make it to the surface, twin Morbizak vines shot up from the depths below. They wrapped themselves tightly around Toa and Matoran and began to drag them down into the fire pit. "Free yourself and get out of here! Get the great disc to Onoa!" Vakama shouted. "I can't! It's too strong! We're Vaki bones!" Nuri answered, frantic. "The fire pit will erupt at any moment!" The Toa fire redoubled his efforts, but the more he struggled, the harder the vine pulled. Worse, he was bound in such a way that there was no room in the pit for him to aim and launch a disc. "Nuri, can you reach my last disc? I need you to load it into the launcher." The Matoran nodded and strained to reach the disc. He could just barely brush his fingertips against it. "I can't reach!" "Try! It's more than just us. The whole city is at stake," said Vakama. Nuri stretched until the pain was so great he could barely think straight. But his hand closed around the disc. "It's power level 4, he reported. "Power code 1. As Nuri fitted the disc into the launcher, Vakama continued to fight to get free. Power code 1 was able to reconstitute whatever it touched at random. It was a dangerous disc to use, because it was just as apt to make the Morbizak more powerful than less. But they had no choice. Nuri wrestled against the might of the Morbizak to get the launcher into the right position. When it was as well aimed as he could manage, he triggered the mechanism and launched the disc at the spot where the two vines joined. It struck the target head-on. Vakama watched, amazed, as the molecules that made up the vines were scrambled. The shock made the plant loosen its grip. The Toa Fire and Nuri scrambled out of the pit. Vakama caught a flash of the new form of the Morbizak, a thick vine with long, sharp thorns, and what looked like a mouth lined with razor-sharp teeth. It gave out an eerie howl and tried to reach Vakama, just as the pit exploded into flames again. The Toametcher knew the flames would not destroy the vine, but he had no wish to wait around and see that horror again. Toa and Matoran ran for the fence. Both made a point of not looking behind them. End chapter 4.